Chapter 313 to 316. As soon as Shinichi arrived, he heard a painful cry, so he was taken aback for a moment, and it seemed he forgot to say the thing he was here to say. Shino asked in annoyance, "This is experimental division, please leave." Experimental division? With a chuckle, Shinichi shook his head. Not only did he not follow Shino's words, but in fact, he walked closer to Shino, and asked in wonder, "That scream just now sounded like Hiriko's, I wonder what's wrong with him." "You seem to have some idea, would you care to explain it to me?" Shino replied coldly, "I have got nothing to say to you." Shinichi did not care about Shino's coldness, and he spoke with a Cheshire grin, "Oh, is that right? But I think you have plenty of explaining to do. For example, the little secret you have been trying to hide, I wonder what Pain would think when he hears about it." Shino squinted, and asked in confusion, "What secret?" Shinichi grinned, "No need to act innocent, you know very well what I am talking about here, the other half, right? How did it feel to swallow the first half? Did you like it so much that you want to devour the other half too?" Shino's eyes widened, and his anger rose, "Are you trying to threaten me?" "Maybe." Shinichi said as his grin widened, "What do you think? Am I threatening you? Anyway, I have control over your fate, so if you want to think that I am threatening you, then so be it. I am threatening you. You killed my subordinate, although I don't really care about her life or death, I still have to make use of her death." Shino tried to suppress his anger, and asked, while gritting his teeth, "What do you want?" "I want chimera technique along with dark medical ninjutsu. You went to the land of demon, and swallowed down the demon Morio, destroyed the whole country that has nothing to do with the conflicts of the shinobi world. Pain may have ignored this act, but I wonder how he will react when he comes to know that you destroyed the organization's plan for your goal of swallowing Miko's daughter, and for what? Because you can rule over the 5 shinobi villages. You are an ambitious guy, I will give you that. And both you and I know that sooner or later you will defect just like Orochimaru did, I wonder what would." Shino hurriedly interrupted Shinichi midway, "I will not accept any threat, I have already planned to confess this matter to the leader and the rest of the organization, so all your threats are meaningless." Shinichi's lips arched, "Is that right? Then I will wait and leave you alone for a while now." With that said, Shinichi turned around and started walking back. Looking at Shinichi's back that was about to disappear, Shino said, "I did not expect that someone like you, who has awakened Manjikyu Sharingan, would be interested in a kenjutsu like chimera technique. Even the prideful Uchiha clan wouldn't hesitate to stoop so low in the face of power. It's really ironic." Shinichi didn't stop, and while waving his hands, instead of worrying about what is ironic and what is not ironic, what you should worry about is how to confess this matter to Pain. "Oh, one thing I forgot to remind you, recently I also got intel that your so-called research assistant Oto Yumi is none other than Orochimaru, and both of you have been in very tacit cooperation. You would better speak this matter too, and hope that Pain spares you for repeatedly betraying the organization." Leaving this sentence, Shinichi disappeared. But Shino did not breathe a sigh of relief, especially after Shinichi mentioned Orochimaru. The mere fact that Shinichi realized that Oto Yumi was Orochimaru really panicked Shino. After confirming that Shinichi had really left the base, Shino muttered to himself, "Once all these matters are revealed, even if the organization does not eliminate me, they will no longer trust me. If they find out that I have been in cooperation with Orochimaru and even dared to bring him to witness Hiriko's ritual, things will become very troublesome. In fact, they will also raise their guard against me. Always keep me under surveillance and my movements will be limited. And there is also no guarantee that Uchiha Shinichi would not expose me after I fulfill his condition." Similar to Orochimaru, Shino doesn't really have any attachment to Akatsuki. Now that he has already exploited Akatsuki to his benefit, and his own safety is at stake, Shino doesn't feel that Akatsuki could offer him anything more. Moreover, when the organization starts collecting bijou, they will be in constant conflict with the 5 great shinobi villages and Amatsukami at the same time, which would be very troublesome to deal with for now. After weighing up everything, Shino concluded, maybe it's time to revive the Land of Sky. Since the Land of Demon is almost destroyed, and Miko is already dead, so the little girl Cheyenne, who is supposedly the next Miko, is alone. Even if she is under Konoha's protection, so Shino feels that as long as he is patient, he will have a perfect opportunity to devour her. Now that he has decided to leave Akatsuki, so the first step is obviously to transfer all his things. But Shino also knows that if he takes away everything, then that could possibly alert others. Understanding that Uchiha Shinichi won't give him much time, Shino obviously cannot afford to take away everything. So he hurriedly packed up all the things that he found to be extremely important inside the storage scroll. After everything was prepared, Shino took a deep breath and after adjusting his mental state, he calmly walked towards the main tower of Amigakure where the leader of the organization stays. Not long after, Shino met with Pain. Pain looked at Shino and asked indifferently, "What is the matter?" Shino said while maintaining a respectful tone, "Hiroko's injury is more serious than our initial expectations, so there is a need for some special materials. The problem is that those materials are so rare that they are not sold in the market, they can only be collected by going to specific locations. So, to treat Hiroko, I will have to leave the Land of Rain for a while." To leave the Land of Rain, he must have a believable reason otherwise, without any mission assigned to him, Shino can't leave the Land of Rain without alerting Pain. And since he is already under suspicion, coupled with Uchiha Shinichi ready to stab him at a moment's notice, Shino understands that even if he has swallowed Morio, he won't be able to escape the combined pursuit of Pain, Shinichi, Biwa Juzo, and Konan at the same time, not to mention that there will also be Zetsu who can track him. So, using Hiroko's injury is an excellent excuse to make his way out of Land of Rain. With Hiroko's current state, even if he survives those hidden dangers, it will take a long time of recuperation and cultivation for him to recover, so during that time, no one will doubt his whereabouts. And even a quarter of that time will be more than enough for Shino to revive Land of Sky. Pain nodded. Shino breathed a sigh of relief. When he was about to turn around and leave, Konan who stood on Pain's side suddenly said, "Your emotions seem to be fluctuating, I would say you are nervous, why is that?" Shino reluctantly turned back, and explained with a bitter smile, "I do not understand this myself, but whenever I stand in the presence of the leader, I always get nervous, perhaps it is because of the pressure from those eyes, after all, the powers that the eyes of Rakuto Sennin give off is simply too much for anyone to be able to bear it head-on." Konan snorted coldly, "I hope that you do not have any unnecessary thoughts like you did the last time and concentrate on things that you are supposed to be doing." Shino nodded quickly, "That time was my responsibility, please forgive me for outstepping my boundaries, there will be no next time." "I hope so because there will no next opportunities," Konan said. "I assure you." Shino nodded. With that said, Shino excused himself, and after putting on Akatsuki's rain gear he galloped in the direction of Land of Fire. Just a few moments after Shino exited the building, Shinichi, who stood on the balcony of one of the higher floors, stared at Shino's departing back, and muttered with a smirk, "Good luck out there, Shino." Konohagakure. Poof. With a poof of white smoke, the very familiar greedy orange cat appeared in front of Kuroto. Even before Kasai asked for money, Kuroto had already placed 2,000 Ryo bills on the table out of habit. "Naya, thank you for utilizing my service, here is your scroll." Kasai spoke, she lifted the 2 bills and passed the scroll to Kuroto. Kuroto hurriedly unfolded the scroll, and after reading the content, Kuroto's lips arched, "It's about time I get myself a better laboratory." Because the 3 members of Team 11 were seriously injured, so Team 11 was given a short respite period by Sandame-sama. During this period, Kuroto also got the opportunity to finally meet Sandame-sama and recited all the things he witnessed in the Land of Demons. Sandame sighed after hearing those, although he had already read the report submitted by Kuroto, hearing it is another thing. Destruction of an entire country is not something that can be taken lightly. Finally, Sandame said, "I will discuss this matter with the other Kages so you do not have to worry about these things. Now what do you plan to do with the daughter of Miko?" Kuroto answered, "Cheyenne is the heir of Miko, so it is inevitable for her to inherit that position in the future. But considering the enemies, it would be best to enroll her in the Ninja Academy. In the academy, she will be able to build her foundation as a kunoichi, while her other education will be conducted under my fiancé, Hyuga Yui's guidance." Sandame nodded, for the personal education of Miko's daughter, he didn't really care much. But he was happy that Miko's daughter will be enrolled in the Ninja Academy. Sandame hopes that the future Miko of the Land of Demons would have friendly relation with Konohagakure. The authority of Miko of Land of Demon is unquestionable, so her being friendly with Konoha would obviously be advantageous for Konoha. Therefore, Sandame had no reason to decline Kuroto's proposal. In fact, he also said that he would make sure that the instructors at the academy take special care of Miko's daughter, befitting of her status. Everything is for the benefit of Konoha. If the next Miko is under Konoha's debt, so Konoha will continue to receive many missions from her, which will ultimately improve Konoha's income. After everything was cleared, Kuroto excused himself and spent some days strolling around the village along with Yui, Cheyenne, and Teruho. The objective was to make Cheyenne familiar with the village, and also spend some personal time with Yui that he has been unable to do for quite a while. One day he also brought Cheyenne and Teruho to the center of the Hyuga clan to introduce them to the patriarch. Although Cheyenne's identity was concealed from most, the higher-ups of the Hyuga clan were obviously aware of the existence of the daughter of Miko of the Land of Demons. Hyuga Hizashi personally escorted Cheyenne and Teruho and led her to the patriarch, Hyuga Hayashi's mansion. At this time, in the training field of Patriarch's house, 2 kids, 1 girl, and the other boy, both around the same age as Cheyenne, were fighting each other using Hyuga Gentle Fist. The 2 kids were none other than Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Niji. The 2 kids stood opposite each other, and after a ceremonious bow, both of them took their respective stance and were ready for combat. "Begin!" shouted the referee. "Byakugan. Niji. Byakugan. Hinata." Both of them activated their respective eyes almost at the same time. "Be careful, Hinata-sama," Niji said gently. "Yes, Niji Nii-san." Hinata nodded. With that, Niji stopped talking and immediately started attacking. Among the spectators, Kuroto smiled looking at Niji. Niji is really good for his age. In fact, I bet that he is even better compared to how strong he was at this age in the original story. Niji's talent is undoubtedly very good. At such a young age, he has already mastered pace, rhythm, coordination, and basic chakra control required to practice Gentle Fist Taijutsu. And the reason why his strength is higher compared to his canon counterpart is because of the presence of Hyuga Hizashi. Since he has not died, so Niji is constantly being trained and supervised by his father, therefore, his strength is obviously better. In contrast, there seems to be no change when it comes to Hinata. She is still weaker compared to Niji. But it's not that Hinata's talent is bad, the main reason is a bit of reluctance within her. Hinata is a gentle girl, and that gentleness is stopping her to make the most out of her talent. This is also reflected here, and slowly flaws have started to appear. Until Hinata hardens her resolve, she would not be able to accomplish what she is truly capable of. Cheyenne, who's sitting next to Yui, tucked her sleeve and asked in a low whisper, "Yui-sensei, why are both of them only using taijutsu? Aren't ninjas supposed to use all kinds of jutsu, like throw shuriken, use swords, breathing out fire, controlling earth and water, etc.?" Yui nodded slightly and explained, "True, but not everyone uses everything." Cheyenne questioned curiously, "Why?" Yui answered, "Well, it's because ninjas are also of various types with different fields of expertise, and everyone has their own unique style of combat that suits them the best. What you are seeing there is a Hyuga-style taijutsu. It is called Gentle Fist. Our Hyuga clan specializes in this form of combat method." Cheyenne nodded as if she understood. She asked, "Can I also learn it?" Yui asked curiously, "Why do you want to learn Gentle Fist Taijutsu?" Cheyenne answered with sparkling eyes, "Well, Kuroto Oniai-chan and Sensei are Hyuga, so you must also know Gentle Fist Taijutsu, so I was wondering if I could also learn it too. I want to become like Oniai-chan." Kawaii was Yui's first thought as she looked at Cheyenne, but she immediately recollected herself, and after putting one finger over her cheek she said, "Theoretically speaking, you can indeed learn Gentle Fist Taijutsu style, however, in practice, it wouldn't be feasible for you, Cheyenne-chan. The Gentle Fist of the Hyuga Taijutsu highly relies upon Byakugan, that is our clan-specific Kekkei Genkai, and our innate ability to expel chakra from all our Tenketsu. Putting aside our innate ability, Byakugan alone brings a worldly difference to our Gentle Fist style." Cheyenne asked in confusion, "What is Byakugan?" Yui realized her mistake, and answered, "You have been in Konoha for a while now, and you must have noticed that many people living in this area of the village have these white-colored eyes, right? These are called Byakugan, and almost all Hyugas have them. But that's the thing, only Hyugas have them. These eyes are necessary to be able to use Hyuga-style Gentle Fist. Without these, mastering Gentle Fist would be very difficult. So, you'd be far better off spending your time learning new ninjutsu and still become much stronger." "Oh." Cheyenne nodded with a pout. Yui smiled slightly while looking at Cheyenne's disappointed look, and she said lightly, "Don't worry, Cheyenne-chan, as I mentioned, there are still many other forms of combat, and you will definitely find something that will suit your style. Of course, if you don't find something else, and if you are still adamant about learning the Gentle Fist, despite how difficult it may be for you, then I definitely do my best to teach you." Cheyenne raised her head and asked expectantly, "Really?" Yui nodded, really. Smash. Smash. Plop. At this time, Hinata was knocked out because of momentary carelessness. Niji himself was taken aback. He expected Hinata to be able to dodge those palm strikes, but she didn't, and now he was a bit panicked that Hinata may have gotten injured. So he hurriedly stepped forward to help get up. Do not help her, let her stand up by herself. At this time a cold voice sounded from the spectator's side. Niji froze, and he had to step back, his expression was at a loss. While Hinata bit her lip and got up. Hyuga Hisashi saw that Hinata was both tired and injured and he wanted to let Hinata take a break. Hayashi obviously couldn't voice out his thoughts, and Hisashi also understood that if he asked Hinata to take a rest then the elder sitting on the side would object. Kuroto understood the dilemma of the two brothers, and volunteered, Hayashi-sama, with your permission may I check up on Niji's progress? Hayashi was silent for a while, then nodded. With a smile, Kuroto got up and walked to the court. Taking advantage of the gap when Kuroto was instructing Niji, Hinata retreated with her injured arm and sat next to her father, who did not even bother to glance at her from beginning to end. On Kuroto's side, Niji ceremoniously bowed to Kuroto, and said respectfully, Sensei, please advise. Kuroto nodded, and said, attack with determination to kill, anything less than that is unacceptable, understand? Niji nodded, and after taking a deep breath his eyes turned serious and the veins around his eyes bulged. Whoosh. After activating his Byakugan, Niji fiercely rushed towards Kuroto and started a flurry of attacks. From just the first few moments, it can be seen that he was holding himself back when fighting Hinata. But when fighting with Kuroto, Niji understood that he can go all out, as such his speed was faster, attacks were more precise, such that his arms had turned into afterimages. However, all of Niji's effort was ineffective as his attacks couldn't even graze Kuroto, who deflected all of his attacks with little ease. Kuroto did not even have to activate his Byakugan to be able to do so. Kuroto only dodged or deflected Niji's attacks and also gave occasional advice. Huff. Huff. Soon Niji could no longer keep up the same pace, and his breathing became rugged, but he still had a fighting spirit burning in his eyes. Kuroto nodded and said, you can go faster, can you not? Niji spoke, I can, but in which case, my form will be improper, and pace will also be disturbed. True, form and pace are two very important aspects of gentle fists. However, you must understand that having a good form and perfect pace would be of no use if you cannot even touch your enemy. Think about it, would they be of any use if your opponent can dodge it or block it all? Niji had a thoughtful look upon hearing Kuroto's words. At this time, Kuroto glanced in the direction of the elders from the corner of his eyes. What he said just now was not just intended to be said to Niji, but also to the other Hyugas, including Hayashi and Hisashi brothers sitting on the side. The education system of the Hyuga clan is too rigid, which has caused the Hyugas to be highly restrained in their desired form of combat from early childhood. There are no variations from clansman to clansman. And this is clearly displayed in their rigid nature. Take Hinata for example. Kuroto doesn't think that she is suitable for practicing gentle fist, however, she is forced to practice Hyuga taijutsu, but because of her kind nature, she is unable to display the full potential of gentle fist. But instead of given proper guidance, she is scolded, met with cold eyes, and repeatedly looked down upon by others, which has made her personality to be meek and weak. Hyuga clan was undoubtedly powerful, has existed for over a millennium, but this ancient history has stopped its development. The times are changing, but Hyuga clan has always been unable to keep up with these changes. So much so that, Kuroto is the only one in his generation with strength at the level of a Kage, and among the females, there is only Yui, but even her strength is still far from being at the level of a Kage, maybe a Kwasakage? Anyway, the overall strength of the Hyuga clan has declined so much. Compared to the Uchiha clan that has been causing storms all over the shinobi world, and has been regarded as the strongest shinobi clan of this era, Hyuga clan is nothing special. In fact, Hyuga clan is almost regarded as nothing more than a clan censor shinobi. The Byakugan, one of the three great dojutsu, is now only used for detection, which is laughable, considering that the chakra ancestor also has a pair of Byakugan, and Byakugan is one of the three great dojutsu. After the practice, Hyuga Hisashi pulled Kuroto to the side and asked sternly, Kuroto-kun, what did you mean when you spoke those things to Niji? Kuroto didn't answer, but just smiled casually while looking in the distant moon that was not clearly visible because it was still daytime. Hisashi frowned and asked seriously, Kuroto-kun, do you have any objection in regards to the education system of clan? Kuroto shook his head, I won't say that I have any objection, but I do have some suggestions, or perhaps should I say advices? Advice? Like what? Asked Hisashi. After a while of silence, Kuroto said, "We of the Hyuga clan shouldn't just focus on Gentle Fist, it is about time we start training the children of our clan in terms of other aspects of shinobi arts, otherwise it would get more and more difficult for us to maintain our foothold in the shinobi world in the coming future." Hisashi was silent, and then asked, "What other aspects are you suggesting?" Compared to the more rigid clansmen of the main house, Hyuga Hisashi as a member of the branch house is more acceptable of the ideas of reform. However, because of his limited vision, Hisashi is also confused about where to start the reforms from. Kuroto shrugged, "Of course start with the weakness of Hyuga clan." "Our weakness?" This time Hisashi was a bit confused. Gentle Fist of Hyuga clan is so strong that few can dare to say that there is any weakness or shortcoming in it. As such, he didn't quite understand what aspect was Kuroto referring to as the weakness of the Hyuga clan. Seeing Hisashi's confused look, Kuroto sighed. He was honestly shocked that even people as experienced as Hayashi are unable to see the weakness of Gentle Fist, or maybe even if Hisashi has noticed, but he doesn't seem to want to accept it. And seeing Kuroto's look, Hisashi directly asked, "Okay, just tell me, what is the weakness of Hyuga clan?" Kuroto stretched out his finger. "First, we cannot compete against Bijou class enemies on an even footing. Hyuga's Gentle Fist can literally render a shinobi useless for the rest of his life, or kill him in just a few shots, but fighting a Bijou class enemy? That's just unimaginable for the Hyuga clansmen, as Gentle Fist will be pretty much useless in that level of battle." Hisashi was a bit speechless. Monsters of such level are simply not what normal shinobi can deal with, as such it is normal for us Hyuga to be unable to deal with Bijou. However, Kuroto shook his head and said, "That's not true and you know it, there are a lot of Uchiha who can subdue Bijou class enemies. Why can't the Hyuga who are the bearers of one of the three great dojutsu, just like the Uchiha, cannot subdue Bijou class enemies?" Hisashi was silent. At this time, Kuroto stretched out another finger and continued, "We cannot deal with Uchiha shinobi who can use Susanoo. Why is that? We Hyuga claim ourselves be equal to the Uchiha clan, then why is it that we are so weak in the face of Manjikyu Sharingan? Why treat Hyuga clan as ordinary? Are Hyugas just meant to be used as censor class? Because if that's really what we are hoping for, then instead of competing with Uchiha clan we should compete with Inuzuka clan and the Aburame clan. Because an Uchiha who can use later stages of Susanoo can destroy our Hyuga clan in moments. When faced with Susanoo, no matter how perfect Gentle Fist is, it is as weak as a twig. In fact, Uchiha Sasuke mocking Hinata a few months ago is not just a child's ignorance. With the emergence of more and more Uchiha who have awakened Manjikyu Sharingan, Hyuga clan, who used to be as strong as Uchiha clan, seems to be weaker and weaker as days pass. Hisashi opened his mouth as if he wanted to retort Kuroto's statement, but even after he thought a lot, he just couldn't think anything that would put up a solid argument. When faced with that massive Susanoo, he, himself feels that he would be pretty much useless. Kuroto didn't point out any more weakness, but said, "We Hyuga need more powerful ninjutsu, we need bigger summon beasts, we need to create stronger and more useful fuinjutsu, we need to better exploit the advantages of our dojutsu in different aspects of shinobi arts that aren't just limited to Gentle Fist, for example, Iryo ninjutsu, distant projectile attacks, etc. You also understand that the direction in which this shinobi world is headed is very chaotic. If the Hyuga clan hopes to survive the upcoming storms, then we need shinobi capable of dealing with those monsters, otherwise, the Hyuga clan too will fade away just like most of those clans that have faded away in the long river of time." Kuroto has accurately worded out what he hopes for Hyuga clan to improve. Especially in the field of summoning, Iryo ninjutsu, and fuinjutsu. As a noble shinobi clan with a long history, it is impossible that Hyuga clan does not have knowledge about the many summoning clans, and knowledge of stronger summons. And even if it isn't there, the Hyuga clan can invest its resources in locating summoning clans and making pacts with them. The same goes for Iryo ninjutsu. Hyuga shinobi have Byakugan, therefore they hold the caliber to become some of the best Iryo ninjutsu users, and yet there are close to no or very few Hyuga shinobi or kunoichi who opts to practice Iryo ninjutsu. And fuinjutsu is not much different. Firstly, we Hyuga have the ability to analyze the chakra flowing mechanism in a seal. Moreover, the Hyuga clan were able to create caged bird curse seal, and yet there is close to no unique seals within the Hyuga clan that can help its shinobi deal with enemies. This seems really ridiculous. Gentle Fist is indeed impeccable. But that's also its weakness. It's not as versatile as Strong Fist. It limits Hyuga shinobi to research and creates their own path, so there is almost no development or advancement within the Hyuga clan. Compared to Gentle Fist, Strong Fist seems to hold more potential even if it is in conjunction with another kinjutsu. Might Guy with his strong fist taijutsu and Hashiman Tonku was able to fight against Uchiha Madara, even if he didn't manage to kill Madara, but being called the strongest taijutsu user by none other than Madara is no joke. And even if we don't count that, Might Guy was still one of the strongest forces during the Fourth Great Shinobi War. But what about the Hyuga clan? Hyuga clan with their perfect gentle fist were nothing whether during Pain's assault or during the later Fourth Great Shinobi War. The Hyuga was used as nothing more than censors who would detect and tell the status of fights. Everyone was basically cannon fodder class, they could be stomped any moment. Is that what Hyuga clan truly is? Has Byakugan been reduced to nothing more than what Nen and Bugs do? Kuroto spoke in a deep voice. Gentle fist has what made Hyuga clan one of the most prominent ones, but gentle fist is also what's restricting us and leading us to fade away. We should not forget that it was Hyuga clan that made gentle fist, not the other way around. We should not limit ourselves to just a clan that specializes in Hyuga taijutsu and sensing. It is time we change, otherwise it will be too late to change ourselves. Hizashi sighed. I will think about this matter, but make sure that you do not speak of this to anyone as it could lead to issues. Kuroto nodded and this time asked something casually, by the way, does anyone in your knowledge of our clan has mastered spirit transformation jutsu? Hizashi muttered, spirit transformation jutsu? There shouldn't be anyone within the clan capable of using this jutsu. As far as I know, there was only one shinobi known to use such a jutsu and he has been dead for a very long time. Kuroto nodded. He didn't really want to reveal what he saw during the Morio's raging as that would be counterproductive. After that out of the way, Kuroto went back to Yui, Cheyenne, and Teruho, who were waiting for him. Yui asked curiously, Kuroto-kun, what were you talking with Hizashi-sama? Kuroto rubbed her head gently and said, don't worry, just some casual updates, nothing too serious. You don't need to worry about these things for now. Yui was silent for a while, then nodded with a cheerful smile. After that, the four went in the direction of Kuroto's house while talking and laughing. At the same time, somewhere within the hinterlands of Land of Tea, a shinobi wearing the forehead protector of an unknown shinobi village said, Shino-sama, we have transported almost all the materials. Shino nodded, very good. The shinobi asked, Shino-sama, this time are we finally going to stop hiding and take our revenge against Konohagakure? Shino said while looking towards the distant moon that was yet not visible because it was currently daytime, do not worry, the land of sky will rise soon enough, and under my command, we will rule over the entire shinobi world. The corners of lips arched as he continued, with my ultimate weapon, I will bury Konoha. The shinobi who stood on the side was excited, is it finally the time? Are you going to use that to destroy Konohagakure? Wow! Exclaimed Cheyenne in excitement while she was sitting on Kuroto's shoulders. Kuroto looked helpless, okay, don't jump around so much otherwise you might fall. Kuroto Oniai-chan, we are flying, we are really flying. But it seemed that the excited Cheyenne completely ignored Kuroto's words and clapped in excitement. Her mood was on cloud 9, and even if they both were flying so high, Cheyenne didn't feel scared at all, rather she was more and more excited as Kuroto went higher and higher. Kuroto said, remember what I told you before? To deal with Shino, firstly the location of his hideout must be determined. Therefore, taking advantage of the cover of night, Kuroto left 2 clones in the village, one to cover his absence and the other to cover Cheyenne's absence, and sneaked out of the village to determine Shino's hideout. And Cheyenne is the only one who is capable of locating Shino. With the hell of that bell, Morio or Shino would not be able to sense Cheyenne, but Cheyenne will still be able to feel Morio's location. Cheyenne, who was extremely excited by the experience of flying, did not pay any attention to Kuroto's words, and said while pointing towards the moon in the sky is so big and round from up close, it is so beautiful. Hearing Cheyenne's words, Kuroto also looked towards moon. He of course understands that moon is more than just beautiful. Because of Tenseigan, Kuroto can always feel some sort of connection or better yet, a resonance with the giant Tenseigan on moon. But Kuroto has never dared to make a connection with the giant Tenseigan. The main reason is obviously the presence of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. Those people are nothing more than ignorant people who aim to destroy the shinobi world because they misunderstand Hamura's ideals. And Kuroto has no wish to stimulate the nerves of such lunatics as that would only prompt them to act earlier than they should according to the original story. But Cheyenne of course doesn't know of all this and said while excitedly pointing towards the moon, Kuroto Oniai-chan, can we go to the moon? Please? Kuroto shook his head, no, we cannot. Cheyenne seemed a bit dejected, But, why not? Kuroto said, these wings of mine will not be able to carry us to the moon. Cheyenne looked at the pair of flapping purple wings, with scales sprouting from Kuroto's back, then sighed. Seeing Cheyenne's disappointed expression, Kuroto grinned and said, "But maybe it will be possible for me to bring up a method through which we can go to the moon." Cheyenne's eyes lit up immediately. "Does that mean that someday we can go?" Kuroto neither nodded nor denied, just said casually, "Maybe." However, that gave Cheyenne some understanding. Then, when can we go to the moon? Kuroto said with a smile, "Maybe in a few years. But even after I come up with a method, we still have to beat those bad people on moon. When I beat the bad people on the moon, I will take you to play on the moon. The giant Tenseigan on moon is very strong. Firstly, it contains Himura's own Tenseigan as the core as well as Himura's entire chakra. Then it also contains the chakra of hundreds of thousands of Otsutsukis who have existed on the moon throughout the millennia. As such, it is without a doubt an extremely strong force. In terms of chakra volume alone, it is hundreds or perhaps even thousands of times superior to Kuroto's own chakra. Therefore, unless Tonari acts as he did in the original story, Kuroto doesn't really have any confidence to take control of Moon unless he completed his grand plan and reaches the Kekkei Mora. Cheyenne asked, "How can there be bad people on the moon?" Kuroto questioned, "Who said there can't be bad people on moon?" Cheyenne pouted and folded her hands over her chest. "Kuroto Oniai-chan, you are making excuses. How can there be bad people on the moon? Doesn't the rabbit goddess live on the moon? How can there be bad people there when she lives there?" As soon as Kuroto heard Cheyenne mention the rabbit goddess, he froze. "Cheyenne-chan, who told you that the rabbit goddess lives on moon?" Cheyenne said, "Of course it was Oka-san." Miko-sama told? Kuroto was more stunned. Did she knew about Otsutsuki Kagaya, or was it just some sort of fairy tale? Kuroto can't be sure. If it was just some fairy tale, then that's all there is to it, as there are countless fairy tales about Rakudo Sanin, his brother, his mother rabbit goddess, and the god tree. But if it was not just some fairy tale and Miko-sama intended for Cheyenne to remember such information, then Kuroto doesn't even know what to think about it. Deciding that he doesn't want to discuss this matter more, as Cheyenne probably doesn't understand this very deeply, Kuroto decided to divert the conversation, and said while pinching Cheyenne's nose, "Maybe I am making excuses, but we will talk all about that later. You remember why I came here tonight, right?" Cheyenne nodded, "To find his location." Kuroto said, "Good, now it's time to get to work. Quickly try to sense the direction where Morio is positioned." Cheyenne nodded, and after sensing a little, she pointed in the southeast. "He seems to be in that direction." Kuroto looked southeast and then asked, "How far is he in that direction?" Cheyenne thought a little and then said with a confused expression, "He is far, very far away." Kuroto nodded and thought, "Southeast of the Land of Fire? Is it near the Land of Whirlpool? Or maybe near Land of Tea, Land of Soup, and around? If you travel far enough, then that would be the Land of Water, so it has to be before that." In the original story, the shinobi of Land of Sky launched an air raid on Konoha, and if Kuroto remembers correctly, the air raid was launched from the direction of sea to the east of the Land of Fire. It seems that Shino's current hideout is located somewhere in and around those island countries, thought Kuroto. Thinking of this, Kuroto flew in that direction. After crossing the border of Land of Fire and traveling further, Kuroto stopped and waited for Cheyenne to further confirm the direction. Shino sensed again and pointed. Kuroto noted the direction and muttered, "That direction leads to the Land of Tea." Understanding this, Kuroto did not hesitate and flew further. Soon Xian said, "I can sense him getting closer and closer." Getting closer and closer? Kuroto nodded and immediately landed on the ground as the purple wings behind his back disappeared. At this time, he was standing within a dense forest, and all he can look at was land filled with trees. Cheyenne, who was held and carrying by him, suddenly hugged him closer. She buried her head in Kuroto's chest, her arms locked around Kuroto's neck and her body shivering in fear. Kuroto has noticed this. The closer they have been getting to Shino and Morio, the more afraid Cheyenne got. If not for being under Kuroto's protection, she might have already cried. Kuroto gently rubbed Cheyenne's back to ease her and said in a calming tone, "Do not worry, Cheyenne-chan, Oniai-chan is here, right? Nothing will happen to you." Cheyenne nodded lightly and asked in a low voice, "Oniai-chan, after finding his hideout, can really get rid of him?" Kuroto immediately nodded, "Of course." Kuroto's words seemed to give some courage to Cheyenne, and her shivering stopped. With Cheyenne calm, Kuroto traveled through the forest and soon located a post. While hiding himself and Cheyenne so that nobody on from the watchtower would be able to spot either of them, and then observed the situation through his Byakugan. In the watch post, Kuroto saw a few shinobi wearing the forehead protector of the Land of Sky. and he spotted many similar outposts through the forest. Two things were common in all of them, one being that all of them had shinobi of Land of Sky guarding, while the other being that they were transporting supplies. By now, Kuroto no longer needed for Cheyenne to point anything more, and he was already certain about many things. As such, he no longer stayed here and left with Cheyenne. After returning to the village, Kuroto made sure to make a pinky promise with Cheyenne to keep their little adventure today a secret from everyone, including Yui-sensei, Teruho, and Hinata-chan, Cheyenne's newest best friend. Cheyenne of course complied and then went to sleep like the good girl she is. While Kuroto sneaked out again, but this time, he went to the back forest of the Uchiha clan and secretly summoned Uchiha SiswiZz and Uchiha Itachi. As soon as the two arrived one after another, Kuroto decided to not waste either of their time and directly cut to the chase. I have investigated the hiding place of Akatsuki organization's Shino. SiswiZz perked up. It's the guy who unleashed that demon inside the village? Kuroto nodded. Itachi asked, so, Kuroto-san, what is Amatsukami going to do? Kuroto said, of course, take action and eliminate the threat of Shino, as well as obtain intelligence on the other members of Akatsuki through Shino. SiswiZz asked, when will we take action? The sooner we act the better, as I have a feeling that Shino has some big plans, and considering his hatred towards Konoha, we can't take the risk of him acting first. After a pause here, Kuroto continued, but I also want the two of you to understand that other than the fact that Shino has become the Jinchuriki of Morio, the demon, so his strength is obviously very high. Also, there will be hundreds of shinobi of the Land of Sky under him that we will be going up against, and we can't be careless. So SiswiZz, you will also participate in this operation. SiswiZz and Itachi looked at each other and nodded together. Kuroto said, and one more thing, Uchiha Tsukihai will be in charge of this operation, the three Homusubi of Amatsukami will act on this mission. SiswiZz frowned, Uchiha Tsukihai? SiswiZz has never personally met Uchiha Tsukihai, so even though he heard of Uchiha Tsukihai, and the fact that she faked her death for the sake of the Uchiha clan, he is still a bit skeptical about her. Itachi was different from SiswiZz, he was not so suspicious as he has been trained by Tsukihai, so he nodded and then asked, Tsukihai-san will lead the team? Then what about you, Kuroto-san? Kuroto shook his head and said, I won't be participating in this mission as I have other things to take care of, this will be a solo Homusubi action. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Nicholas Berenger, Ben Phillips, Yami Tancho, Taco TSK, Jose Torres, Rizik Ottman.
If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.